This will be a congressional fight, a constitutional fight, a legal fight, and on days like this, a street fight.
And this is our country, and we're not going to let Elon Musk have it. He can't have it. So, Elon, come here and face us. Bring over here.
The Democrats holding more anti-DOGE rallies in D.C. as they ramp up their war on Musk's cost-cutting crew. Their latest weapon, the federal courts. Judges across the country have moved to block some of Trump and Musk's biggest moves, including most recently a decision to block DOGE from accessing Treasury records. Other Dems want to go a step further and shut down the government over DOGE. They can attack all they want, but President Trump is standing by Musk and the DOGE team.
We have to solve the efficiency problem. We have to solve the fraud, waste, abuse, all the things that have gone in the government. I don't know if it's kickbacks or what's going on, but the people, look, I ran on this, and the people want me to find it. And I've had a great help with Elon Musk, who's been terrific.
Bottom line, you say you trust him.
Trust Elon? Oh, he's not gaining anything. In fact, I wonder how he can devote the time to it.
All right, Jesse, the worst congressional fight, constitutional fight, street fight, the worst crisis since Watergate. Since when is transparency a constitutional crisis?
I don't know.
Good question.
Quasi and Fume, if you're going to say something with earmuffs on, I'm not going to take you seriously. I mistakenly wore earmuffs one time on Fox, and O'Reilly killed me for about a year. I never wore them again. So lose the earmuffs. So the Democrats are shutting down the government to protest Trump. Shutting down the government. Trump's trying not to pay bureaucrats, so Democrats are going to shut the government down and bureaucrats aren't going to get paid. Have you ever seen Democrats boldly say, I am pro-government shutdown? Ever? Trump is turning Democrats into Republicans. And they're now worried that Elon Musk has access to their social security numbers. Elon Musk is a part of the government. The government has access to your social security numbers. What does he think Elon's going to do with your social security number? What is he going to like open up a credit card in your name and like max it out at Best Buy? You think he's moonlighting as an identity thief, the world's richest man? This is crazy. Judge, this reminds me of, let's just say, a spouse who is a shopaholic, and all of a sudden you intercept the mail one day. Look at the statement. And she grabs it out of your hand and says, you can't look at this. Now, if you do that, that makes me suspicious. And that's what the Democrats are doing. In order to look at the books, you have to open the books.
All right, Dana. Apparently, for those who think this is a constitutional crisis, it looks like they have something to hide.
And well, again, it goes back to that 10 to 15% approval rating, issue rating. They are figuring out a way to drive down their 31% approval rating that they have right now. So Pete Buttigieg, for example, is out there complaining about Trump not bringing prices down fast enough. We talked about this a little bit in the A block. And that's like Gigi Waters causing a huge mess in the kitchen and then complaining that no one had cleaned it up fast enough.
It's happened.
It has happened, and it's happening right now. The other thing that's incredible is that one of the things that we see with these Democrats last week, remember when they went to the Department of Education and they were complaining and they wanted let inside the building? They didn't say what they were going to do when they were going to go inside. They were berating the federal official, or the federal worker who was out there he was just doing his job, and Maxine Waters was giving him a hard time.
She wanted to see his ID
So
again.
they were outside at the Department of Education. At the very same time, those same Democrats literally skipped a House hearing that was being held that very moment on the future of American education in the House last week.
God.
And you had the Parents Defending Education group put this out there saying, this doesn't make any sense. And it's not like you have to just look at the three main broadcast networks of my childhood. All of this information is out there for everyone to see. And it's kind of entertaining to see them spiral downwards. That's why I think it's getting so much attention.
You know, Jessica, I mean, if you've got a problem, don't you need a forensic accountant to go look at whether or not there is a problem? And just like Jesse said, what's Elon Musk going to do with Social Security numbers or anything else?
Well, I think there are two issues at play. The constitutional crisis here is that Congress has been subverted. So these are congressionally appropriated dollars. And we've seen this over and over again in the federal judges that have ruled on this. They're not saying that there aren't programs that don't deserve to be axed. They're saying that these aren't dollars that the executive can decide what to do with. There's a process to go through. On the accountability front, yeah, we have a government accountability office. We also have a big spending database where you can go in and you see where the dollars are going, and they should have conversations about programs that have got to go. But Elon Musk, he's not a forensic accountant. He's a scientist and one of the most brilliant people to have ever lived, for sure. But he has a number of minions who have not passed the same level of security checks that they should have in order to have access to that information. And I don't know what they're going to do with your social security number or what they're going to do with Head Start or Medicaid or Medicare or anything else that they have access to. But the point is that they shouldn't. And you see that. Like the big one from over the weekend was the freeze on the NIH spending. So I understand that there might be some overhead costs, the quote unquote indirect costs that you think are too high. But going to them and saying that indirect costs have to come down to 15% would completely hobble American innovation.
But without Elon Musk, we wouldn't know of any of this stuff. Money going for transgenders.
But I'm not talking about, I just said the NIH. I said the future of cancer research. For every dollar that the NIH grants out, you get $2.46 back in. They generate $93 billion a year.
Trump
and then
just brought in $500 million.
No, well, first of all, Elon Musk even said that isn't real money.
Oh, it isn't?
Well, Elon Musk said it himself. He replied to the tweet. But Katie Britt, the senator from Alabama, had to go out there and say, no, don't take our NIH dollars.
Okay. Greg?
This is the conversation that we're supposed to be having. There is so much fraud, and you bring up Medicare and Medicaid, there are hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud. Imagine you had an icon on your computer screen, and it was of the White House, and you never double-clicked on it, and it was just there. Musk finally double-clicked on it, and we are seeing the files. And it's read-only. Nothing's happening. We're reading the files. And that is enough to scare the poop out of these Democrats. And it's not about constitutionality. It's about the fact that it's a gravy train for them. The Treasury rubber stamped these things. They went right through. There was no control. There was no stopgap. And this is becoming a revelation for people. So when you're a victim of fraud, there are three parties. There's the victim, the perp, and the person you call to stop the fraud. So the Democrats, they aren't the victim. They aren't the people trying to stop it. Who are they? Just by simple logic, they are the perp. And they are embracing the character, saying, oh, my God, you're going to have the Social Security numbers. You idiot. These guys run PayPal. They have the Social Security numbers, you nutbag. They don't even know. Okay, either they're so stupid that they don't know how a business works, that everyone else gets this, that every business does an audit. It's called zero-based budgeting. That's what you do. Every year you start at zero and try and figure out how to cut costs. But they act like it's an act of terror because they've never run a damn business. Coupled to that, it's a gravy train. They've been incentivized to exaggerate certain kinds of programs. Why do victims of disaster not get funds, but there is a trans opera in a foreign country? It's because that incentivized and exaggerated funds that trickled down to people. So you're looking at corruption, you're looking at ignorance, and I'm there for it. And you know what? This isn't going to go away. We double-clicked on the icon.
Yeah, this one.
Definitely. Up next, James Carville has a new theory for why he thinks Democrats are stupid.
On Capitol Hill, Democrats are calling for more aggressive tactics to resist President Trump's reform agenda, even if it means a government shutdown. What? Kayleigh McEnany, Guy Benson are here with more.
Morning.
Yeah, so here are Cory Booker and Andy Kim. They were on the Sunday shows. This was them talking about how they want to resist.
The strategy is to do whatever we can to stop Donald Trump from hurting Americans, from making us less safe, less secure, and from raising our costs.
You are open to voting yes to shut down the government, to make this point.
This is on them. We are at a point where we are basically on the cusp of a constitutional crisis, seeing this administration taking steps that are so clearly illegal. And until we see a change in that behavior, we should not allow and condone that, nor should we assist in that.
And NBC News has this headline, Kaylee: "We are figuring it out. Democrats struggle to keep up with Trump's dizzying pace." They don't know where to look.
I bet they are, because Trump has done more executive orders in 10 days than most presidents, I think, if not all, have done in 100 years. So that is a dizzying pace. But Andy Kim, he went on to say, you know, we're on the cusp of constitutional crisis. That's the new buzzword, because I heard Chris Murphy say it's a constitutional crisis.
Oh, so the bat signal's gone out.
Yes, it's as if they've not learned that the existential rhetoric did not work. The threat to democracy, not to mention, we have sound that we could pull up at any moment from December of Hakeem Jeffries talking about government shutdowns hurting working people and those affected by hurricanes. What happened to that logic? It's out the window 60 days later.
Speaking of logic, James Carville has another twister here. All right, just go ahead and play this with his unique idea right now inside the party.
And it's like there's a plant somewhere in, quote, progressive, unquote, America that just sees how many stupid things that they can embrace. It's stunningly stupid. Both of them.
I actually would have liked to have seen that on camera. It is stunningly stupid when the greater majority of Americans, they got to balance their own budget. And they're telling Washington, go ahead and do it as well. And now they're giving us try. And the Democrats, like Andy Kim and others, are saying, you keep doing that, we're going to shut this place down.
One of the buzzwords, as we just said, is constitutional crisis. They're leaning into that. Another phrase that we're hearing and an argument repeatedly from the Democrats is no one elected Elon Musk or his team. And I just don't understand, from the party that has fully supported to the hilt every federal bureaucrat forever, who are unelected, faceless people who make all sorts of decisions with our money and have forever, for decades. Now one person who's unelected making some recommendations with a team and trying to find efficiencies to reduce the size of government and the scope of government, that's the crisis. And who elected them? That logic, that argument could be easily applied to the bureaucratic state that they are defending, possibly with a government shutdown. And I haven't heard them grapple with that hypocrisy at all. No one's asked them. I wonder if there'll be any pushback from many of our colleagues in the media. So far, not so much, which isn't exactly a surprise.
I read this morning, Kaylee, in this Substack, The Liberal Patriot, and they're pretty moderate Democrats saying, perhaps going after Elon Musk all the time is not the best bet. Here's a call for 5 here, guys. These are voters to ABC and how they support Musk and Trump.
It's pretty characteristic of Elon Musk. And I think that, you know, the whole idea of coming in and looking at government efficiency was going to be very disruptive. By design, immigration was a top concern, safety and security. It was one of the things that swayed me. So I'm glad to see bold action because I think it's needed.
I'm not entirely certain that he's going about it the right way. I do think that what he is setting out to do needs to be done.
So it's like getting the same goal may not be the right way to do it. Who knows? We'll see. But they like what they're seeing.
They like what they're seeing because he's not touching Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. He's not touching the big 3 that really affect all Americans. He's finding common sense items like the penny. I mean, who would have thought that we're watching the Super Bowl and Trump says, I've instructed the Treasury Secretary not to keep producing the penny because it costs 2 cents to produce it. These are common sense things most Americans think about and think, oh, okay, if you're going to cut that waste, let's do it. Can it be disruptive? Sure. That's why with USAID, for instance, preserving PEPFAR funding and whatnot is very important. But he's disrupting the system, fixing the problems with Band-Aids along the way.
So I told Brett last night that Department of Education will be next, Pentagon will be next. And he's convinced that you're going to find millions of dollars, if not more than that, inside of those departments as well. In the end, if this works, Guy, we could look back on this moment as saying, you made our government better.
Yeah.
And that'd be a good thing.
Especially in some of the low-hanging fruit. And I think it would be definitely in the billions, at the least, that you would save. And a lot of these gigantic, unaccountable bureaucratic agencies. And look, the idea that there's no oversight whatsoever, no, there's congressional oversight. The judges are already fielding the lawsuits, right? The judicial side of the government, that element will also look at this. So I think the way the Democrats are talking about it, like Elon Musk has this band of unaccountable people that got torches and they're storming the castle and just, you know, burning everything to the ground. It's not actually what's happening. It feels like the Democrats are casting about for something to coalesce around to find a purpose again. And they've chosen this. They've chosen defending federal bureaucrats and illegal immigrants, which are some interesting priorities that they've settled on. Maybe they could have waited for a better one, but here we are.
Maybe Carville's right.
Carville sometimes is right.
Sometimes.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Kaylee.
Thank you.
See you at noon today.
Thanks.
All right, Sandra, let's bring in Jonathan Turley, Fox News contributor and George Washington University law professor. So the unions argue that this employee buyout offer is a, quote, unlawful ultimatum. They wrote in part in their petition to the judge, quote, the Office of Personnel Management's forked directive is a sweeping and stunningly arbitrary action to solicit blanket resignations of federal workers. You can argue the stunningly arbitrary part of that, but what they say is true. I mean, Trump is trying to get these people to quit. He wanted 100,000 of them to resign. Some 65,000 have done so. The question is, does he have the legal ability to do it?
This is one of the most creative aspects of the Trump administration. It's actually quite fascinating because on the surface, it would seem like he does have this authority. I'm not entirely convinced as to the basis for this federal judge. They're saying, look, we will allow you to stay home. You don't even have to show up at work according to the current order for other employees. You can spend 8 months looking for another job, and then you agree to resign. That likely is within the authority of the president. His presidents often change the work conditions, hours, appearances of employees. So I'm not quite certain as to the basis for saying that it's unconstitutional. This is an agreement between the employees and the administration, a consensual agreement that they would resign if they could have those months to look for a new job.
Yeah, and this argument that Senator Warner was making was, how is he going to fund this? Well, as long as Congress appropriates money at the current levels, the money will be there to pay these folks through until the end of the fiscal year. The vice president, J.D. Vance, who's over in Paris for an AI summit, says judges are not allowed to control Trump's, quote, legitimate power. He said this, quote, if a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal. If a judge tried to command the attorney general and how to use her discretion as a prosecutor, that's also illegal. Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. Now, you can say that, but at the same time, there were plenty of executive orders that Biden was trying to get through. They got blocked by judges as well. So what's the difference here?
That's right. And I think that this will all shake out with something in the middle, that you do have to comply with federal laws. You do have to deal with appropriated money in the way that it was appropriated to be used. All of that has to shake out. I think these federal judges, however, have gone too far. I think that they are really butting up against Article 2, the inherent powers of the presidency. And the argument that you're going to shut down the government coming from Democratic members because of these policies is curious. I mean, the Democrats are threatening people that want less government with shutting down the government. That's like threatening a vegan that you're going to impose a beef ban. I mean, it's not going to be particularly effective. In fact, it may be celebrated. So I think that much of this is atmospheric. So I think that what you're going to see as these cases play out is that these judges have gone too far. It does not mean that all of these claims are meritless. There are federal laws that must be complied with. But the sweeping aspects of this, barring all Treasury officials from seeing material, for example, I think is going to fall badly when it gets to review by the appellate courts. You can't sweep that broadly. The president has authority to run the executive branch.
Yeah, which, in fact, brings me to my next point, which is that Trump is urgently trying to overturn the ban on the funding freeze. Saying this in a DOJ filing, basic democratic accountability requires that every executive agency's work be supervised by politically accountable leadership who ultimately answer to the president. I mean, sorry, that's the ban on being allowed to see the Treasury payment system. But at the same time as that is going on, a judge in Rhode Island just ordered the Trump administration again to lift the freeze on funding. So how is all that in your mind going to shake out?
Well, once again, I don't see the way that a federal judge under Article 3 can limit Article 2 powers to this extent. A president is allowed to conduct an audit when he comes into office. He is allowed to slow down payments while he reviews them. It's well known that all administrations, including the Biden administration, often force through a lot of spending efforts right before they leave office. A new president's allowed to examine all of that. Now, does that mean that they can cut off funds that are appropriated for their specific purposes? No, it doesn't. But they are allowed to look at how they're being spent. That is the discretion afforded to a president. So I think, once again, it's going to shake out. But this federal judge went pretty far. Now, this is a temporary injunction. So presumably the Department of Justice is going to come in and say, look, he's allowed to do this. This is how we're going to proceed. And we'll stay within these navigational beacons.
Yeah. Well, this judge in Rhode Island, I guess the spirit of his order was that you can't freeze all funds while you look for waste. If you look for waste and you find it, then you can freeze those funds. One other court challenge that Trump is facing is that a judge is now seemingly blocking some detainees from being sent to Guantanamo Bay. It's 3 Venezuelans. And this judge said, quote, the mere uncertainty that the government has created surrounding the availability of legal process and counsel access at Gitmo is sufficient to authorize the modest injunction. These Venezuelan detainees have not been told that they're going to Guantanamo. They just believe that they fit the profile. And some of the other people who've been in detention along with them have been sent to Gitmo, so they figured that they're next. So,
yeah.
I'm just trying to wrap my head. I'm trying to wrap my head around the idea here that a judge is saying, we're going to block you from sending people that you haven't said you're going to send to Gitmo.
Well, I do think that opinion is on very thin ice, if there's any ice remaining. I mean, first of all, you can send people to Guantanamo Bay. Democratic presidents have done that with people who have immigrated to this country, like the Haitian flood that that the administration was dealing with. The fact is, you do have to give them due process, but you can't assume that that's going to be denied. You know, the injunction should have focused on guaranteeing due process, not saying you can't transfer people from point A to point B. That's within the discretion of the executive branch.
Yeah, and we've seen plenty of lawyers showing up in Guantanamo over the years as well. Professor, always great to catch up with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate it. Sandra?
Well, President Trump is standing by Elon Musk as his DOGE efforts face a tidal wave of resistance from Democrats. And following USAID and the Department of Education, the president teased a new target for the tech billionaire's government efficiency efforts. Watch.
Trust Elon? Oh, he's not gaining anything. In fact, I wonder how he can devote the time to it. He's so into it. But I told him to do that. Then I'm going to tell him very soon, like maybe in 24 hours, to go check the Department of Education. He's going to find the same thing. Then I'm going to go to the military. Let's check the military. We're going to find billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud and abuse. But I campaigned on this.
Indeed, we will likely find billions and billions. Why the resistance? And the whole point is it's not stopping.
I don't know why there is resistance to this, honestly. Like when Elon Musk came out and Trump backed him on auditing the IRS, for example, why in the world would you not want the IRS audited? Would you not want to know if your tax dollars are not properly being paid and they're not going to the right places? Or maybe they don't want us to know where our tax dollars are going. That's the reason they don't want an audit, because they don't want us to actually know what we're spending our money on. And finally, for the first time, we may actually find out, and maybe it will actually affect our taxes. I mean, because I don't know about you guys, but how much are you paying in tax returns now as opposed to, like, let's say 10 years ago? I mean, would you not say that this could potentially turn the tide, perhaps, on the amount of money that we're getting bulked on taxes?
Actually, Julie, I've never met a tax cut I didn't like.
Yeah, that is true.
That's the supply side.
And Larry, the president's standing by, like, no matter what resistance is coming at him, he's saying he's staying in command and he's staying.
He surely is. He's going to send him to other departments, including the Pentagon. Just think about this, though. Go back to the USAID fiasco. This was a systems analysis, but what they uncovered was sheer fraud. That is to say, the agency was shelling out dollars to places and to media outlets that never should have been gotten and never should have received that money. There was no congressional law. There was no congressional mandate. This is the same issue they're going to discover with all the alphabet regulatory agencies who have been making laws that don't exist, that Congress never passed, that Congress never mandated. The beauty of a systems audit is not that it changes policy. It uncovers the fraudulent use of money and fraudulent policies that didn't exist in the first place. Or put another way, the Democrats have owned this bureaucracy, the D.C. swamp bureaucracy, for years and decades and decades and decades, and now the gig is up, and they don't like it one bit.
Yeah. And you and I have talked about the prolific spending on behalf, unfortunately, of terrorists. Frankly, the point is, this is just the very tip of the iceberg. Just on Friday, a congressman uncovered, we're still actually giving $40 million a week to the Taliban, even despite the pause on foreign aid spending. So the whole point is, this is a root canal. It's widespread, and the president and Elon Musk are not going anywhere.
Yeah, I like that analogy, a root canal. That's exactly right. When you think about it, Elon Musk has a once-in-a-generation opportunity to break the bureaucracy. You think about the abuse, $59 million in taxpayer dollars, FEMA going to illegal immigrants in luxury hotel rooms. My favorite is the Biden floating pier, which never got the attention it deserved. $230 million on a floating pier in Gaza that, by the way, they were warned wouldn't work. And there was one day of aid delivered, and it shut down. $230 million of your taxpayer dollars gone just like that. Then you get to the abuse. Crossfire Hurricane, Russia, the Hunter Biden laptop, Lois Lerner, the Tea Party scandal, FBI, Catholics, pro-lifers. We could scroll the whole hour. The abuse, that all costs taxpayer dollars. This is a golden opportunity in a golden era, and Trump and Elon Musk are taking it.
Yeah, and we're also funding that resistance because we're paying the salaries of those Dems that are pulling stunts on sidewalks instead of getting to work supporting this.
Yeah, and part of this is the promises made, promises kept mantra. Julie had a great point about the taxes. President Trump wants to keep these promises about the SALT taxes, the no tax on tips, extending his tax cuts. And all of these things give the American people some confidence that they'll be able to keep a little bit of their money and it's not going to be spent overseas. I think the Democrats are starting to get their resistance together a little bit. There was a new letter put out today from the Democratic leader, Jeffries, talking about being engaged in a multifaceted struggle. But then he digs in a little bit further down. And he says House Democrats are committed to driving down the high cost of living for everyday Americans. So I think the Democrats might start a shift towards, are you seeing the money in your pocketbook? Are those grocery bills coming down? We'll see how quickly President Trump can get that along.
How are we with USAID money going to subscriptions to Politico? Was that part of the congressional law? Can anyone find a provision in that law? Next thing you know, they're going to be supporting the New York Times. I mean, I'm just saying, money, $8 million 1 year, I believe it was, $35 billion over the course of several years. Does anybody believe that Congress passed a law in the committee print that says we shall subscribe to Politico?
The answer is no.
I'm just asking. I mean, it's above my pay grade.
It's above mine, too, but I venture the answer is no. But like we said, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
First to Fox Business correspondent Hillary Vaughn, who gets us up to date on all the breaking details in this story for us. Hi, Hillary.
Hi, Martha. Well, DOGE is taking a lot of incoming. They've been bombarded with lawsuits trying to stall their progress and handcuff their efforts to continue to expose the fraud and waste of Americans' taxpayers' dollars. Federal judge ruling over the weekend that DOGE cannot have access to the Treasury payment system out of concern that sensitive information could be disclosed. President Trump says these court rulings are crazy and that DOGE will not be deterred.
When a president can't look for fraud and waste and abuse, we don't have a country anymore. No judge should frankly be allowed to make that kind of a decision. It's a disgrace. Some of that stuff that we're finding is very fraudulent. Therefore, maybe we have less debt than we thought of. Think of that. So a lot of things are happening, but Elon's doing an excellent job.
The DOGE team has expanded its spread to other agencies. The Department of Homeland Security and FEMA are now finding themselves in the hot seat. Musk saying, quote, the DOGE team just discovered that FEMA sent $59 million last week to luxury hotels in New York City to house illegal migrants. That money is meant for American disaster relief and instead is being spent on high-end hotels for illegals. This problem not isolated to just FEMA, but DOGE has found is an issue that has plagued other parts of the federal government. Musk saying today, quote, quote, funds were diverted from almost every part of the federal government. There also appears to be significant funds siphoned from Social Security to pay for illegals. Raiding Social Security, not the greatest idea, considering they're expected to completely run out of money in 10 years for Americans who need it. Musk says that's why they're auditing it. But Democrats are promising to fight Musk at every step. They think their best defense against DOGE right now is the courts.
We're going to rely on the courts to step in and say, this is illegal. You are violating the Constitution. And at some point, that has to matter.
He is, by the way, doing things that are spelled out as Congress's duties. And then when the courts stop him, to defy court orders brings about a constitutional crisis.
We are winning in the courts. And people need to understand that the courts are doing their job.
Martha, Musk this afternoon is responding to Democrats' anger at him by calling them grifters who don't want the grift to end. Martha.
Hillary, thank you very much.